Military analyst and author TomCooper has been closely monitoring the front lines in Ukraine since the early days of Russia's full-scale invasion. In this interview, we will discuss Russia's current push near Sumy, China's growing role in the war, Europe's real readiness to defend democratic values, and whether Ukraine's defense industry could become a long-term strategic investment for the West. Tom, nice to see you again.
Hello, nice to be with you again. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So, Tom, Russian forces are steadily advancing in Sumy region. And how successful are they right now on the battlefield? Is this a tactical move or part of a broader offensive plan?
Well, you can't say that Russians are, in terms of military situation, particularly successful anywhere. It is not that they are, running big-scale offensives, or in terms of classic, what we are used to see over the last 80 years, mechanized operation, mobile operation, in terms of big formations of troops, of heavy equipment, of tanks, of artillery, and so on, moving in big formations, more or less, at least in columns, and advancing and moving and whatever else. No, this is not happening. What is happening is that Russia is, well, successful sort of in continuing to keep Ukraine under pressure through relentless, constant, small-scale attacks by infantry and all sorts of improvised vehicles. And this is what is pushing Ukrainian forces back, because these relentless attacks are supported by UAVs. Nowadays, these are fiber optic, cable-guided UAVs. They are supported by UMP. Okay, let's call them the way you're calling them in Ukraine. This is CAB glide bombs, which are not particularly precise, and from time to time missing by 10 to 15 kilometers. But on the other hand, sometimes they are precise enough to cause damage to forward Ukrainian positions. And the Ukrainian foremost top commanders have no solution for this. They have no strategy. They have no ideas how to solve the situation. Syrskyi is, well, at least he has largely stopped moving battalions from one section of the front line to another. Drapati is overloaded with all the work he is required to do. On one side, he has to retrain and reorganize, reform the armed forces, ground forces. On the other hand, he has to command this or that sector time and again. At least until this corps command structure is up and working. And so the Russians are simply exploiting the opportunity to continue keeping Ukraine under pressure. So they are not going to now drive all the way to Kupiansk, not to talk about Kharkiv or to Sumy, but they are still making their advances of 20 to 200 meters a day, and this cannot be denied.
I was just reading the article this morning that David Petraeus, American general, he said that after Ukraine, Putin will go to Lithuania after he will capture Ukraine. And this is, I cannot say it's funny, it's not funny at all, but it's kind of ironic. How can you predict and even see that Russia can capture Ukraine?
Yeah. Look, I've been declared for unprofessional and whatever else, so let me give you my unprofessional opinion. I consider such assessments by professional experts for entirely pointless. Nobody can predict the future. That is the first point. The second point is there is now it is kind of a trend, kind of fashion in military analysis right now to claim Putin ante portas and he's going to invade NATO, he's going to invade Baltic states or Finland or something. This is currently in fashion. Therefore, everybody's doing this. It's as simple as that. Back in 2022, it was in fashion to expect Ukrainian collapse any moment.
Absolutely.
And this went on from February until August 22. Then it was fashionable to declare Ukraine or to expect or to announce some sort of a massive, major Ukrainian victory in a matter of weeks, where single blow defeat of Russia, that was from September 22 until around March 23, and so on and so on. So you always have such things, and I don't understand them, and excuse me for especially not even paying attention anymore about this, because this is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, at most I can explain this with a very very simple or relatively simple fashion. NATO is currently rearming itself, not particularly fast, not particularly, bolstering. There are no major operations of bolstering its capabilities. One is refurbishing one airbase here and another airbase there, and then refurbishing or reorganizing or rebuilding the railway tracks from Poland to Baltic states, and a little bit in Finland. There is enough time. Nobody's in a hurry, and the politics is busy with arranging conferences so they can arrange meetings in order to arrange conferences in order to talk. So everybody has time.
Yeah, you said the very. Yeah, that's a very sad truth, that nobody's in a hurry anywhere.
No. Why? Because, it's more flashy and more useful for PR purposes to stage press conferences and meetings and yet more conferences and talk about talking. Because if one would now have to bring some decisions, that could be very politically damaging, for the politicians in question. And so, okay, I can understand if the new German chancellor says, no, he's not going to reveal future military aid for Ukraine, but if nothing else, then he has his buddies and apostrophes from the Ministry of Defense who like to brag about what is being sent to Ukraine, and therefore they are leaking the details about things they shouldn't be leaking. And if it is nothing of that kind, then there is somebody else who has something against this or that kind of politics, and therefore they are leaking information and so on. So basically, we didn't manage to under apostrophes, didn't manage to help Ukraine win this war. Then Ukrainians have messed up on their own, of course, and they are alone to blame. Nobody else is to blame, and but never mind, let's organize another press conference so we are appearing on the TV this evening. This is important.
Yes. At the same time, President Zelensky said that Chinese Mavic drones are no longer available to Ukraine, but Russia still has access, even with the Chinese factories inside Russia. Does this mean China is now systematically supporting Russia despite claiming that they are neutral?
The Chinese are neutral, actually, and wasn't it that there were specific decisions and statements by the government in Kiev about 1 year ago? That was, as far as I recall, in early 2024. Chinese wouldn't have stopped exports of materials for UAVs to Ukraine. Back then, when I've reported this on my blog, then everybody was laughing. Meanwhile, it's true. So what shall I say? What else shall I say about it anymore? And so when you ask me, are they neutral or not neutral? They are making business. Don't forget that the Russians are paying them up to 20 times what they would usually pay for the equipment they are delivering. So why shouldn't they make a big business out of it? They're earning good money. And if the West is so stupid as to permit this, where is the problem?
Yeah, but at the same time, China has also limited exports of key drones components to Europe and the United States, like critical magnets. Still, you are saying it's about money, but it looks like it's a new form of a hybrid warfare where attack control becomes a pressure tool.
Well, is anybody complaining about the extensive use of Chinese social media and modems in Europe? Nobody's complaining about this. So where is then the problem with if they are exporting UAV pieces to Russia? And if the West didn't take care to bolster its production of UAV pieces on time, which was, it had only 3 years to do so, where's the problem? The Chinese are making good money out of this. And the fact is that, for example, the exports to the United States are currently decreased by 90%, so they have to find another market or gain themselves market shares from other place. So this is what they're doing.
Okay, yes. German Chancellor Merz told U.S. Vice President Vance that Europe is fighting for freedom and democracy. Remember when Vance said that, what are you fighting for? It sounds like a powerful words, you know, Tom, but do you see real determination behind them? Is Europe truly ready to defend those values, you know, especially when it comes to Ukraine? I know I'm asking you again and again that, but maybe you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm biting my lips not to answer all the things I think about this. Excuse me. Now, it is... Again, I'm unprofessional, but one cannot answer to this in any. I don't know any kind of answers in professional fashion. I mean, this is talking all the time, and excuse me, but Merz is not more skilled or more capable or something else, nor his advisors, than earlier chancellor or any other president or chancellor or prime minister around Europe right now. At least not from Warsaw, further west. Exceptions are to be found in Copenhagen, in Baltic states, in Sweden. But nobody cares about them. Nobody's paying attention. There are no big powers in Europe, you know. So they don't matter. It is certainly so that we have to wait and see if Merz does change anything fundamentally in regards of German foreign politics, and then in regards of how the entire EU and the entire NATO are acting vis-à-vis Ukraine. But from what I know right now about what is NATO doing is nothing. And why is this nothing? Look, one shouldn't forget that decision-taking levels within NATO are always involving Americans. And right now, nobody within NATO trusts Americans. Nobody is sure that if they say something or do something, this isn't going to land via the United States, via a president who is obviously a FSB agent, actually, or at least asset, as the Russians call this, is not going to end in Moscow. So, therefore, nobody's talking with the Americans. And because they're obliged actually to talk with the Americans, they're not talking with each other either. So all of NATO is sitting there and doing this. So that is what is happening. And then there is some hope that one or another politician of these top 4 or 5, perhaps 7 major European powers might bring his or her own decision and do specific things, but in essence, nothing is moving and everybody is waiting for the weather to improve.
Tom, me as a person who's reading your blog, Sarcastosaurus, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Sarcastosaurus, yes.
Yes, and I'm reading, and I know that you support many Ukrainian units, from the 13th to 128 brigades, if I'm not mistaken, unofficial formations who still hold the front line. So my question is, how critical is the need for basic supplies, vehicles, medical kits, something else?
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as I can say or assess it, it's a little bit better than it was during the winter. It is simply so. We have less requests for specific kind of, let's say, simple equipment, simple expendables, and there are more requests for specialized equipment. That means the situation is a little bit better in general, but there are still items which are missing, you know, like vehicles in particular. Overall, I would assess as the mass of Ukrainian army units being something like 50% under-equipped with simple cars, SUVs, call them whatever you like, vans, such vehicles. This is where there is the biggest problem. And there is even more problem insofar that the primary source of replacement vehicles, which is European Union, is dry. That means there are next to no second-hand cars which could be cheaply bought in whether in Germany, UK, in France, in Italy, and then brought to Ukraine. And this is currently our biggest problem. We have enough money from donations, thanks to people who are so kind to donate for this charity, so to say. But it takes 2 or 3 months to find a single car which is not entirely broken, and then bring it to Ukraine and bring it to the units in question. And in other cases, we have to, or not me, of course, there are people in Germany, for example, there are people in the UK who are so kind to invest their private time and overhaul these vehicles before sending them to Ukraine. But this is still time-consuming and costs money as well, because if nothing else, you have to buy spares. So it's, as I said, generally the supply situation has improved itself, or has been improved, but in regards of vehicles, it's still critical, because if you have mechanized and motorized infantry brigades, but these are lacking 50% of vehicles they are supposed to have, then this cannot be called a good situation. They should be at least up to 70-80% of what they should have. And yes, I mean, theoretically the government is doing its part of the job, but I don't see this happening a lot. And it's like with the UAVs, if the brigade has money, if it is well supported by donations, it can buy and afford lots of UAVs. But if not, then it's critically short on UAVs. And there are, due to this decision, was it December or January, of the Ministry of Defense to de facto create a free market for UAVs within the ZSU. The situation is such that there are brigades that have absolutely no UAVs, or only enough to spend 4 of them per day. And then there are other brigades that have, well, you can never have too many of them, but at least enough UAVs, to FPVs and such UAVs, to use them whole day as much as they like. So there is a mess in total. That is my impression.
Yeah, but Russians at the same time, they are modifying drones with, shrapnel, thermobaric charges, some...
Yeah, different warheads, yes.
Yes, and is this a sign of Russian tech evolution, or just, kind of a desperation, improvisation? Because I've heard the Ukrainians are quite good in that, and I thought much better.
Yeah, well, theoretically, Ukrainians, yes, are more individualistic, more freedom-loving, and therefore much better at innovation. The problem is that plenty of that innovation is not really realistic. It is not easy to realize. It is overthinking and so on. But everybody is trying to push and trying, to get his project or her project into the pipeline. That means financed by the Ministry of Defense and then pushed into production. The next problem is the quality of expertise within the Ministry of Defense. Essentially, there is no quality of expertise, but there is, who is going to pocket more. It means if you bribe the right persons, you first have to bribe the right persons outside of Ukraine. This is interesting, Ukrainians outside of Ukraine, in order to get in touch with the Ministry of Defense, in order to present them your project as a Ukrainian. And then you have to bribe somebody at the Ministry of Defense to buy your project and to start financing it. Mm-hmm. Without this, nothing is working. And then you have, as I said, the Ministry of Defense then says, okay, now you have the project in production, but we are not responsible for any further distribution or anything else. You have to sort this with brigade commanders. I've written a specific post on my blog, and I want to hit with my head the desk on which I'm working the whole time, because I cannot understand this kind of incompetence, this kind of disorganization, this kind of, I don't know how to describe it. This is Ukrainian side. Then on the Russian side, you have this, everything is centralized, very centralized. That means nothing happens without people at the top bringing their decisions. Nobody dares bring in decisions. Nobody dares saying da without first ascertaining that the level above says da. So that means in most of cases, decisions are going all the way up to Putin, which in turn means that decisions are taken very slowly. fortunately. But the problem is that the Russians are given a lot of time to bring their decisions and then to implement these decisions. And once they bring a decision, for example, to manufacture Shahid, alias Geran, in big numbers, and they have brought this decision, then they are constructing ever more factories. There are ever bigger factories, and suddenly, as we have seen this now, suddenly under apostrophes, they are launching 300 Shahid or Gerans over Ukraine per night, which is oversaturating the Ukrainian capability to defend. Ukraine neither has enough SAMs for that, nor interceptors, manned interceptors like F-16s and Mirages, nor enough interceptor drones. So this is no accident. This is no incompetence or something. On the contrary, it is just a different system of acquisition, production, and implementation, or application in this case. This is not bad nor worse, and it could be easily defeated had, and this is with which we are getting back to the problem of decision-making in Ukraine, which is incompetent to the bone. I'm sorry to say it. Ukraine could have had hundreds of attack drones already back in August, September 2023, at least.